Well, Happy New Year, everybody. It's time for the first Jonesing for Football of the new NFL League year 2024. And what a busy first few days of the new year it has been. Bill Jones here in Dallas, where things are so busy. And Cody Winstead in the Jonesing for Football studios in Philadelphia, where they are trying to figure out a way to catch the Cowboys in the NFC East.
They're doing a good job of it, Bill Jones. Have faith in Howie. We love him here in Philly.
Have faith in Jerry. We don't love him here in Dallas.
Yeah, interesting. A lot of my Cowboys friends here in Dallas. There aren't a ton of them, but I do hang out with some Cowboys fans here in Philadelphia, and they are panicking. What are the Cowboys doing? Why aren't they making any moves? The Eagles are making all these moves. Cowboys aren't making any moves.
First off, if they are Cowboys fans in Philly, that's their first mistake. And secondly, just practice a little bit of patience, something that Philadelphia is not known for, right?
Very, very true. I've actually texted that to numerous friends this week. Hey, be patient. Be patient. There's still plenty of good players on the market, Cowboys fans.
Yeah, but let me tell you, I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning last night, and I want you to just throw a team out at me, and I've got their comings and goings in free agency. I think this is my favorite time of the year. This Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on into the first week of the new year, where I can sit here I've expanded my big green notebook, by the way.
That's
my
nice.
Big green notebook not only has draft prospects in it, it's got NFL teams where I use it year round. That's why I've gone to the big loose leaf binder notebook. That is the big green notebook now.
It looks more official, Bill Jones, not to like knock the old school green notebook, because that's like legendary, like Mount Rushmore stuff for draft coverage. But that does look more official right there. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, I'll post this on Twitter, CBS 11 Bill Jones. I found an old picture of myself covering the Cowboys in training camp in about 1984. And it's a picture of me interviewing a Cowboys player, and I've got a notebook in my hand.
Of course.
And it looks like a green notebook. And so I've actually have been carrying around a green notebook since 1984 at least.
That's awesome.
40 years.
40 years. I'm 40 years old, by the way, Bill Jones. So congratulations to you. And that's where the whole thing came about. You didn't even know it, but you were just laying the groundwork on the green notebook. Very cool.
All right. So how are we going to kick off the new year? What are we going to do special today?
Okay, well, today we're going to recap the week that was in free agency by looking at teams who've improved the most, whether it's by signings or trades. A ton of movement, a ton of fun tracking these players, moving to new squads. But before we dig into all the teams that are actually doing a good job and signing a bunch of players, we're going to talk about one of the more quiet teams, and that is Bill Jones, Dallas Cowboys. I want to dig into this with you, Bill Jones. They've only signed, at the moment we're doing this podcast, one player. But I want to hear your thoughts on the Cowboys and their free agency philosophy to this point.
They've signed one player that wasn't on their team last year.
One free agent.
Yeah, you're not going to downplay the signing of long snapper Trent Sig, are you?
No, or Jordan Lewis or CJ Goodwin. No, those are all huge moves for next year.
They are. They're very key moves. Yes, yeah. That's right.
Sure.
And then the other one, the outsider coming in here, is Eric Kendricks, and that is a big move. And by the way, how does John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and those San Francisco 49ers do business? How respected are they?
Very respected.
And Eric Kendricks was ready to sign with the San Francisco 49ers on Wednesday. And then lo and behold, by Wednesday night, for some reason, he's switched and decided, instead of being a backup to Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner in San Francisco, he could be a starting middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys and his former coach, Mike Zimmer. And so he reversed course and came to Dallas instead. And as we all know, we've chronicled it time and time again on this podcast. It was ridiculous, and even Jerry admitted it now that how ridiculous it was that they had so few linebackers on this team at the end of the year last year.
Yep.
So it's a great place to start as far as rebuilding this team, and with a guy who knows Mike Zimmer's system. Paul Gunther, the senior defensive assistant, was on the staff at Minnesota, and of course he was with Zimmer in Cincinnati, became the defensive coordinator in Cincinnati for many years after Zimmer got the head coaching job with the Vikings. So there's a familiarity there with Kendricks. And so you got Kendricks, you got Damone Clark, who was a starter last year. Van Der Esch is going to retire, it sounds like, due to his injury problems. And away we go at linebacker on this team. So they've settled one position. They got DeMarvion Overshown coming back, third-round pick from last year, too.
Yep.
To answer your question, I think it's prudent what they're doing, not going after these guys. And even the guys that left to go to Washington, I don't know if you'll get into what the Commanders are doing, but I would not have, at the money that they got in Washington, I would not have re-signed them in Dallas. The way I look at the NFL now is much like college recruiting. You have these players a little bit longer in the NFL than what college teams have. If you've got a really good player, you only have them for 3 years and they're gone.
Or 1 year and they transfer.
Yeah, or they transfer after 1 year or maybe a semester. And but in the NFL, I look at it, you've got these guys for 4 years and then you're just turning it over. And unless you've got stud players like a CD Lamb or Micah Parsons, that you have to keep around for mega money.
So you're not worried about the lack of moves.
I am not worried at all.
Okay, you're saying that those will eventually come here over the next week or so.
And I think you will make more prudent moves in the offseason doing it this way, much like they did last year. And the big thing they did last year, they made a couple of trades to get veteran players. They got Brandon Cooks for a 5th rounder. They got Stephon Gilmore, and it was about a week into free agency when that happened after the first wave, and then you start filling in the blanks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how not Jerry Jones, not Stephen Jones, but how Will McClay works his magic on this Cowboys roster. How about that?
Yeah. A couple things, Bill Jones. To your point on teams waiting until the second wave of free agency and or trades, I like that. Let me walk you through some of these good teams. And no one's really talking about these because they don't get the publicity of the Dallas Cowboys. As we sit here right now, how many players have the Baltimore Ravens signed?
One.
Derrick
Henry.
They were 13-4 last year. As we sit here right now, how many players have the Green Bay Packers signed?
2. Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney.
Exactly. How about the Kansas City Chiefs? They won the Super Bowl, Bill Jones. How many players have they signed?
I love this game.
There we go.
This is why I stayed up till 2 o'clock last night filling this out. I didn't even know you were going to ask me these things. They have now signed 2, a tight end, Irv Smith, and a wide receiver, Hollywood Brown.
Right. And Matt Ariza, if you want to get into the punter. So this week it's been 2 players and a punter back in the deck last week. So what I'm saying is, sure, the Cowboys have only signed 1 player and everyone's freaking out. But as I just showed you, there are multiple good teams who are taking the same philosophy, sign 1 player, sign 2 players, maybe sign 3 players, and they're slow playing this. And then next week, they're going to take advantage of all these rates that have dropped.
One thing I should point out on the Cowboys is the other thing that has to happen here in Dallas is they have to do something to create more cap space. And that something, I believe, is they need to do something with Dak Prescott's contract. And you can sign him to a long-term extension, which is a 5-year, $285 million deal, and create it that way. Or he's going into the last year of his deal. You can restructure his contract, much like what Kansas City has done with Patrick Mahomes' deal, which freed up $21 million, much like what Buffalo has done with Josh Allen's deal, which freed up $17 million. You will free up $21 million on this year's cap if you restructure Dak's contract. I think what is happening right now is they're trying to figure out, and if there is a meeting point on a long-term deal with Dak, and if not that, they will restructure when they need to in order for them to sign players under the current cap. The other thing, as we're taping this right now, they haven't done anything with Michael Gallup. And Gallup, by 3 o'clock on Saturday, has a $4 million guarantee that comes due on his contract. So they're probably going to do something with him.
Makes sense. Thank you for adding that part on Dak, because that's important. Let me quickly go over this, Bill Jones, because my friends are talking about the running back position. What are the Cowboys going to do at running back position? So while you were up last night writing all the moves around the league, I looked through every roster in the NFL, every depth chart and free agency, and I found some possibilities for running backs for the Cowboys. Now, these are either free agents or these are guys who could be traded for relatively cheaply, 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round pick. All right, do any of these names strike you, Bill Jones? Tyler Algier, 23 years old with the Falcons.
I like him.
Okay.
I like him.
You would like that one. How about Khalil Herbert, 25 years old? Not so much. Okay. Javonte Williams in Denver, 23 years old.
I really liked him coming out of college. I don't know about the knee injury and exactly where he's at health-wise.
Yep. How about Alexander Madison, 25 years old?
I haven't done as much work on him, but the fact that Minnesota gave up on him, I think maybe he's a second back and did not, and he spit the bit as a lead back.
Yep. Well, I do think a lot of these guys could be second backs, and then you draft your starter or something.
And you're doing it by the Cowboys are going to do it by committee.
Exactly. How about Dameon Pierce, 24 years old?
Okay.
Okay. They got Joe Mixon, so he should be available. How about our old friend Zeke Elliott, Bill Jones, 28 years old?
I have no problem at all bringing Zeke back in a role. And if he has decided that his market is now up to $3 million, then that fits.
Yep. And just a long shot here. I like Chris Rodriguez that was with the Commanders. He's now the 3rd back in Washington, and I think you could get him for—
You are singing to the choir. I love Chris Rodriguez at Kentucky.
There you go.
I also loved Sean Tucker, who's at Tampa Bay, the Syracuse back, who had an injury issue last year in the draft. So
okay. Well, there's a couple deep cuts that maybe one of them turns into something.
But running back in the draft is what they will do also.
Yes. And depending on who they get, it'll be the free agent trade guy will be number 1, the running back in the draft will be number 2, or vice versa, depending on how it works out.
You can get Marion Barber in the 4th round.
Agree. I'm with you. All right. How about we talk about some teams that are actually doing well in free agency and making real moves, Bill Jones? Teams that are actually improving their rosters. Can we get into that, please?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I want to start here in Philadelphia, home of the best front office in the NFL, per Dak's brother, Bill Jones. In Philly, we call it Howie season. It happens seemingly every year around this time. The best GM in the game goes out, adds quality players, and solidifies his team as a Super Bowl contender. And wouldn't you know, he's done it again this year. Let me cook, Bill Jones. I know you want to respond, but let me cook here. 3 big-time signings for Howie Roseman, starting with the game-breaking back Saquon Barkley, 3 years, $37 million. I love this for multiple reasons. Number 1, it's another elite weapon for the Eagles to go along with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Saquon will go from seeing a bunch of 8-man boxes to very few here in Philly. He's averaged 99 scrimmage yards per game since his rookie year in 2018, 4th most in the league, and I expect that similar type of impact here for the Birds. Number 2, it takes a ton of pressure off of Jalen Hurts, and that's a smart move by the Philly front office. They might have given him a little too much responsibility last year instead of sticking with that plan next year, they're going to dial it back a little bit, make things easier on their franchise quarterback, which I think is super smart. The other two moves were on defense, which needs a significant upgrade, and they got it with Deanne Brycehoff, 3 years, $51 million. And in the secondary, they welcome back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 3 years, $33 million, one of the best safeties on the market. Huff is important because the Eagles had 27 fewer sacks last year than they did the year before. And the former Jet will help with that. He's coming off a 10-sack season. And the question for him is how much will he actually be on the field, because he's never played close to 50% of his team's snaps. And he might not here in Philly either with their great D-line depth. As for CJGJ, that's what we call him here in Philly. 2 years ago with the Eagles, he tied for the league lead in interceptions with 6. Last year, without him, their secondary was awful. So his playmaking ability is a huge addition for a team that needs more takeaways. And then, oh yeah, they also added potential starter Devin White at linebacker, potential starter Devontae Parker at wide receiver 3. They also locked up the best kicker in the game, Jake Elliott. So to recap for you, Bill Jones, they added the #1 running back in free agency, the #1 safety in free agency, the #3 edge rusher in free agency, plus those second-tier moves I mentioned. How does Howie do it? Positioning his Eagles to make another deep run in 2024.
Are you done?
I had a lot to talk about because the Eagles are making a bunch of great moves. That's not my fault.
All right. I just want to ask you about the #1 move they made. That's
Saquon.
Barkley.
Yep,
Yeah,
Saquon.
you're right. All right. Oh, you don't call him Barkley in Philadelphia. There's another Barkley. So you have to call him Saquon, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's Charles Barkley, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, Saquon. He's so big and he's so beloved here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, specifically because of his time at Penn State. He's just by one name. It's like LeBron. It's Saquon. That's what we call him.
Okay. So Saquon was top pick in the draft, right up there at the very top of the draft in 2018.
Yep.
2 years after Ezekiel Elliott was the 4th pick in the draft.
Yep.
And Saquon, I'm looking at his career stats here. Okay. And he ran a 4.440 at the combine.
Okay.
I just looked up Zeke ran a 4.47 at the combine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, Barkley rushed 5 yards per carry. Okay. Had a 1,300-yard season. And then the following year, he was 4.6 yards per carry at a 1,000-yard season. And then, of course, he had the injury in 2020. But here, since his injury in 2020, this past year, or let's take it 2021, he averaged 3.7 yards a carry. 2022, he made the Pro Bowl at 4.4 yards per carry. And then in 2023, he was back down to 3.9 yards per carry. How come we don't talk about Saquon Barkley like we talk about Zeke Elliott?
Well, first and foremost was last year, the Giants had no quarterback the entire year. And so he was literally the only player on offense they had. Everyone keyed on him. I think 3.9 yards per carry makes sense. Zeke, on the other hand, had Dak, had CeeDee Lamb, had Amari Cooper, had a #1 offense. A lot of the time Zeke was there, yet his averages continuously went down.
Is it possible? Now, I think we're all in agreement that Zeke no longer runs a 4.47.
I think so. That's probably a safe assumption.
Is it possible that Sir Saquon Barkley isn't the same running back in 2024 that he was in 2018 when he ran a 4.4? Is it possible?
I think it is possible, yes.
Okay. All right. That's just my point on the signing of Saquon Barkley. What are you getting exactly in Saquon Barkley?
I think you're getting
just some food for thought there for you.
Some food for thought. I will consume that food for thought and think about it. But I do think the big difference is obviously he's been facing 8-man boxes. He's been the top of the opposing defenses chart every week. Circle Saquon. Can't let him beat you. And now he's going to the Eagles where they have Jalen. He not only can throw it, but run it. They have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. Saquon's no longer at the top of that must-stop list.
And they no longer have Jason Kelsey.
They no longer have, but that's true. But I do still think the Eagles' offensive line will be solid. Bill Jones, do you have a team that you liked in free agency? Because I got another one if you want me to keep cooking.
No. I've heard enough from you for now. Speaking of running backs, do you think Joe Mixon is anywhere near now where he was when he first came into the league?
Maybe not, but I think Joe Mixon's still a quality back. I think Joe Mixon is still a borderline top 10 running back in the NFL.
So what did Saquon get with the Eagles?
3 for 37.
Okay, and so Mixon got 3 for 27 with the Texans after they made the move with the Cincinnati Bengals, and that's where I'm going with what the Texans have done in free agency. And at the top of the list, I do think Joe Mixon still has something in his tank. Okay. Yep. And I do think Barkley has something in his tank. It just will remain to be seen how much he has in his tank.
You're trying to throw a Cowboys wet blanket over my Eagles love here, Bill Jones. I know what you're doing.
But you know the move that I love most for the Houston Texans, right?
Everybody in the world knows Danielle Hunter to the Texans down there in Texas with you, Bill Jones.
Yes, he's going home to Houston, Danielle Hunter. And I remember I meant to get my 2015 Big Green Notebook out to be able to read to you what I said about Danielle Hunter. You know, in all of my years, 40 years of possessing a Big Green Notebook, Danielle Hunter is right at the top of the list. He is in the Big Green Notebook Hall of Fame, and he's headed for the Pro Football Hall of Fame with already 87.5 sacks in his 8-year career. I remember in 2015 seeing the now retired Cowboys personnel man Tom Siskowski on draft night, the second night of the draft, asking him as we went to the restroom, by the way.
Okay. Hey, you got to run into people.
Happened to see him. You hang out on draft night at Valley Ranch. You hang out in the restroom because they got to go take care of business at some point. That's why you get some information.
Yep. Good time to cross paths with people.
So what's up with Danielle Hunter? And he was kind of in agreement, I think. But anyway, so he fell all the way to like the 88th pick in the draft. And it took a defensive genius named Mike Zimmer to pull the trigger on him with the Minnesota Vikings. And so now the rest is history. And that was the same year the Cowboys drafted Randy Gregory. And I'm sitting there, and that was late second round. I'm sitting there going, hello, what about this guy from LSU who only had 3 sacks in his career at LSU, but have you seen a picture of him?
Yep.
And anyway, I remember talking with his high school coach in Houston, Dave Meadows, and he's a down-home Texan. I asked him, so what kind of potential? The guy lived in the weight room in high school and then in college at LSU. And he said, I said, so what kind of potential does Danielle Hunter have? Hall of Fame.
Well, he called it. He actually was one of the few people who saw his greatness before you, Bill Jones.
That's right. And so they basically, Houston and Minnesota traded edge rushers. And I really like Jonathan Grenard coming out of college too. And so there's no knock on Jonathan Grenard, but I do think you put Danielle Hunter on one side and Will Anderson on the other side, and they got something cooking, as Cody would put it. They got something cooking in Houston with the Texans. They've also, all right, the Cowboys have done nothing outside of Michael Kendrick or Eric Kendricks in free agency.
Yep.
The Texans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They've signed one side of the football and then some. They've got a 12th man. They got the Texas Aggies in the first 3 days of free agency with their picks, and they had to do a lot on the defensive line because they lost a lot on the defensive line. As Sheldon Rankins moved on to Cincinnati, he got big money there. Malik Collins went to San Francisco. Grenard goes to Minnesota, and they lost the linebacker Blake Cashman. Big pickup for them. Azeez Al-Shaair
Yeah.
who was with Tennessee last year, but prior to that, he was with D'Amico Ryans in San Francisco. So that's the trade out there. Cashman goes to Minnesota. Al-Shaair goes to Houston. He knows the defense. They got Fatukasi from Jacksonville, Danico Autry from Tennessee. And I think that they're doing all right in Houston with their free agency. And I like what Nick Caserio has been doing the last few years, actually, in building that team up. And they can make a run in what in an AFC South that all of a sudden has become very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The signing of Al-Shaair is similar to what they did last year with Jimmy Ward, bringing one of D'Amico's guys in and kind of solidifying a position where he'll run the linebackers just like Jimmy runs that whole secondary there. So I'm with you. I like the mix and move. They are going to be good. Houston is going to be good, and obviously CJ is important there, but they re-signed Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown, Des King. And Kyer Fairbairn, the kicker, by the way, got a ton of money. But anyway, I like what you're doing there with the Texans. I can't poke any holes in that because that'd be like poking holes in CJ. So I know you tried to poke holes in Saquon, but I'm just going to let your Texans thing go.
I'll continue to poke holes in Jalen.
Thank you. That's fine. And you're probably going to poke holes in the Commanders. Can I talk about the Washington Commanders, Dr. Jones? Because that's another team I think has had a good week. It's a new era in Washington with Dan Quinn taking over as head coach. They need a fresh start, finishing last in the NFC East the last 2 years and without a playoff win since 2005. That is incredible. There wasn't a huge splash signing like a Saquon or a Kirk Cousins, but a lot of smart, solid veterans that will greatly increase the overall talent level on this team. Let's start on the defense because with Dan Quinn there, we know that side of the ball is going to get much better in a hurry. Listen to these names. A pair of linebackers, Pro Bowler Bobby Wagner, 1 year, $8.5 million. And then they're pairing him with Frankie Louvu, 3 years, $36 million. So that's a real good way right there to revamp a defense. What's up?
I got one thing to say.
What?
So Dan Quinn all of a sudden
values linebackers? Yeah. We'll see. That shows you that wasn't his philosophy in Dallas. He was getting forced into no linebackers there. But those two guys, Wagner and Louvu, two of the top 25 tacklers in the league last season. So that's a nice addition for those guys to kind of just completely restart that defense and base it around them. A couple Cowboys made the move to the division rival on that side of the ball. D lineman Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler. Not everybody knows Armstrong, if you know what I mean, Bill Jones, but he is a nice player. 16 sacks combined in the last 2 seasons. And they weren't done there. Cleveland Farrell and Jeremy Chin should also get a lot of snaps on that defense. Offensively, the headliner was Austin Eckler, the former Charger running back, coming off a down year, but they get a good deal with him. 2 years, $11 million, and he'll run behind their new center, another former Cowboy, Tyler Biadasz, 3 years, $30 million. PFF had him as the 5th best center in free agency, so I think that's a strong signing there. They also added veteran tight end Zach Ertz, who will be a good leader and culture setter there at 34 years old. And so I really like what the Commanders are doing, Bill Jones. A new running back, a new tight end, and a new center. So they're already kind of supporting whatever quarterback they select at number 2, whether that's Jaden Daniels or Drake May. And one more thing that we need to mention. Don't forget, the Commanders have 5 of the top 101 picks in the draft. They have 2 second-rounders and 2 third-rounders. So I'm not saying the Commanders are going to be in the playoffs quite yet, but they will be much better than that 4-13 from a year ago.
I like the linebackers.
Me
Wagner,
too.
even at 34 years old or whatever he is now.
Pro Bowler.
Louvu and Jeremy Chin is their Jaron Curse.
You're right.
And then we'll see what Eckler still has. You know, I assume he's still got it. They overpaid for Biadasz and Dorrance Armstrong. I like the 2 players. I don't like them at 3 years, $30 million, and 3 years, $33 million. And so
I think you're right on that, but you got to pay a little bit more, but you do solidify that position. And they might not be like high-end Pro Bowl players, but they will be solid, and you don't have to worry about either of those guys.
Is Armstrong better than Montez Sweat?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not even close. But they traded Sweat and got a second-round pick, I think, for him. So that seems like a decent move.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just wondering, are they better at edge rusher now than what they were last year with Montez Sweat and Chase Young?
No, not at all. But no, of course not.
Okay.
But they also have Dorrance. They have a solid veteran who Dorrance is going to play a lot of games. He should be fine.
One thing on Dorrance Armstrong is, yeah, he had the 16 sacks, and I don't mean to knock him. I think he's a good guy, a good player. We'd like to have him on your team, but not at the money that he's making.
Yep.
How many of those sacks were because of who was playing on the other side in Dallas? So
fair point. Fair point. He's never faced a double team in his career. I think we would both agree with that.
And he was the third best edge rusher in Dallas behind Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence. All right.
Yep.
So let's see where I'm going with my next one.
Okay.
You know where I'm going to go? I'm going to go to the Chicago Bears.
Yes.
Were you surprised?
No.
What sealed me on going with the Chicago
that.
Bears is the move they made late Thursday when they acquired Keenan Allen from the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay. And by the way, I like what the Chargers are doing. I like what Harbaugh is doing. Okay. By releasing Mike Williams, by trading Keenan Allen, he is setting his own, he's got his own handprints on what they're doing there in Charger land. And it may take some time. They may not do it this year, but he's going to get his kind of players in there. And so he's setting the stage for that. Yep. But what Chicago has done, and specifically with the move of Keenan Allen coming to Chicago, can we review what Ryan Poles did to the Carolina Panthers last year?
I know what he did. Brilliant.
The Bryce Young trade?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Here's what Chicago has done in the last year, what Ryan Poles has done, their GM, who, by the way, learned from some of the best in the business in Kansas City for 13 years, and Scott Pioli, and then John Dorsey and Brett Veach, as he was, and then he got the GM job in Chicago. All right, in that trade with Carolina, they picked up wide receiver DJ Moore. They also got the 9th pick in the draft, which they traded away, moved down one spot, and they took a tackle in Darnell Wright. They got a 2nd-round pick, and they got Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback, with that pick. Yep. They got this year's #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. And now the 4th-rounder that they got in the deal last year, they just moved for Keenan Allen, and they also have a 2025 2nd-rounder coming next year. So for Bryce Young, they traded Bryce Young for Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, Keenan Allen, and a 2nd-round pick next year. The GM of the year is Ryan Poles of the Chicago Bears.
I've been saying it for well over a year. Ryan Poles is doing a phenomenal job of not necessarily trying to win immediately. He's building this thing the right way, just like you said, just like he saw in Kansas City. This is not a team that's going to spend a bunch of money and then try to win and then have to ship everybody out and cut, be way over the salary cap. He is building this team with a lot of young players. He's bringing in solid veterans, and he's got a ton of picks going too.
And here's what he's done in free agency. Besides the trading for Keenan Allen, he signed DeAndre Swift. He's got a tight end in Gerald Everett. He's got 3 offensive linemen that will serve as either backups or compete for a starting spot in the case of Ryan Bates. Yep. And on defense, you've got Kevin Byard coming over from Philadelphia, and you got Simone Biles' husband.
Jonathan Owens is a nice 3rd safety option. I like it.
And all they've lost in free agency right now. Nathan Peterman, who went to New Orleans, and Darnell Mooney, okay, now to Atlanta, and but they've got Keenan Allen.
Yep.
And then Justin Jones, defensive tackle, signed with Arizona.
Yep. I love what the Bears are doing, Mr. Jones. Now we just have to figure out what they're going to do with the number 1 pick plus the number 9 pick. Are they going to trade down or up, or what are they going to do with both of those? Because they're ready to win, I think, if they get a quarterback in place.
They believe that. They don't make the move for Keenan Allen without thinking that we got a chance to win now. And that, I think that tells you what they think about Caleb Williams, because I think they're going to take Caleb Williams, and they think Caleb Williams can win now, just like CJ Stroud did last year.
I'm with you. And Justin Fields is still an intriguing name we need to mention. Do they get an extra pick if they move Fields, or do they keep Fields? But that'll be interesting to follow as well. Let me give you 2 honorable mentions, and then we'll pop out of here, Bill Jones, because I know you got to go. You have a lot of podcasts to do on top of this one. You're a busy man. I want to mention Russell Wilson to the Steelers. News broke back on Sunday before the legal tampering period that he was headed to Pittsburgh. I think this move works well for both sides. Russ needed a fresh start, but don't let anyone fool you. He's still playing good football. 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, 98 passer rating last year, 8th best in the league. So Russell Wilson had a better passer rating than Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. Okay, Russell Wilson can still play. Plus, I like Pittsburgh because he can ease into that culture that's already established. Mike Tomlin, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. Like I said, that culture has been passed down for years. Russ doesn't feel like he's got to establish a culture or be the face of a franchise. Just focus on playing good football. So I like Russ to the Steelers, Mr. Jones.
Okay, I like it too.
You do?
For Pittsburgh. Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
And, oh yeah, thank you, Denver, for paying 38 of the $39 million that he's getting next year.
That's why I love the move. He's going to be making, or the salary cap, well, what he'll be making from Pittsburgh will be the veteran minimum.
Yep. And can I just mention DJ Reader to the Lions, Bill Jones? I have a huge write-up. I could talk for at least 30 minutes on the DJ Reader move, but just let me say this. Him and Aleem McNeil, 2 of the top run-stopping D tackles in the league, now they're together. The Lions had the number 2 rush defense in the league last year. Now you're adding 29-year-old DJ Reader to the mix. Plus, they bring Marcus Davenport off the edge. So they're going to go Hutchinson, McNeil, Reader, Davenport. Oh, baby, my Lions are going far next year.
By the way, while we're talking about GM moves, how about what the Giants did to the Panthers, giving up just a 2nd and a 5th for Brian Burns?
Yeah. Well, they also gave him $30 million.
Yeah, right. They huge contract for him too. But yep. By the way, we've got breaking news.
What do we got?
Speaking of the big green notebook, now sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss. And this is proof that we missed on one 4 years ago, and that would be a different edge rusher out of LSU.
Yes.
Kayvon Chason, who did nothing with Jacksonville in his 4 years there. Well, he has been signed by the Carolina Panthers, a 1-year deal with a maximum value of $5 million. That shows you that sometimes you can't, even the big green notebook can be human.
Sometimes. See what the Jags did, and you mentioned this. Why didn't someone just look at a picture of Danielle Hunter? The Jags just looked at the picture of Kayvon Chason, and they drafted him, and then all of a sudden, nah, he's not a great player. But hopefully he can get a chance to revamp his career. And he's a 1-year, $5 million deal. Honestly, $5 million's a lot for a guy who's probably has 5 career sacks. I don't know. I'm just making that up, but
no, the key word there is a maximum value of $5 million. That means there are incentives that if he has probably a double-digit sack season, which you can total up all his stats in college and the NFL and not come up with double-digit sacks. I like his personality, so that's why I liked him in the Big Green Notebook. But he plays with a lot of confidence. He's got a lot of swag. He just doesn't have a lot of stats.
I just looked it up. 5 sacks in his entire NFL career. So I actually nailed it right there. 5 sacks in 4 years. That gets you a potential of $5 million per year in the NFL.
All right. You know what? There's one other thing we need to mention as we wrap up this edition of Jonesing for Football. And you know what that one mention would be?
It has to be Babe Laufenberg, because Babe is texting me more than you, Bill Jones. Normally, whenever I'm hanging out around draft time about this time of the year, I get a text. I'm like, well, what's Bill Jones want? I don't even have to look at it. But Babe has been texting me more than you. He's in on these quarterbacks. I know he's watching film probably right now. I heard he just watched Spencer Rattler. So we're going to have Babe on to talk the quarterbacks when he's ready and willing to go. But I cannot wait for that.
I could have told him about Spencer Rattler. He did not need to watch Spencer Rattler.
No, I like that Babe watches everybody. He doesn't listen to outside opinions. He watches everybody.
I want Babe to watch my guy, Bo Nix. And does he play as well as he talks? That's what I want to know.
I think everybody wants to know that too, Bill Jones. Does he play as well as he talks? I want to know that as well.
If you talk the talk, you better walk the walk.
Yep. We'll see. I can't wait to see where Bo Nix goes. Maybe as high as number 11, right?
Maybe that's who the Minnesota Vikings are targeting, Bo Nix, and not your guy, JJ McCarthy.
Not my guy. Not my guy.
All right. That does it. And, I'm doing baseball again next week, but I think there may be an off day sometime next week. So I'm taking my Big Green Notebook out to Arizona, where I'm covering the world champs.
I can't wait. Let me know what the plan is for next week. I'm flexible, but I want to talk. We got to get into these draft guys. We didn't talk enough draft prospects. Free agency's gone. It's in the rearview mirror. Now it's draft through the end of the next month. Let's talk some prospects.
By the way, speaking of Bo Nix, how about his center, Jackson Powers Johnson? You need to check him out. And we'll do that maybe on the next edition of Jonesing
for Football. Love you, babe.